Hello, July 22nd, 2021. In our mad dash to get 5G everywhere in the world, there's one area that we're just not thinking enough about, and that is it's going to result in a massive increase in the amount of power that the IT system uses. The IT system itself is very inefficient when people stop and realize how much of your computing, when you do it, if you go online and to search something, you trigger massive searches in some of the server farms, and that in itself is a significant use of electricity. But 5G, there's getting to be more and more reports of just how inefficient 5G is and how it's causing problems. What prompted this, why I decided to do this, was an article I ran across out of China, about China, and we'll just bring that up here. That just any electrical use causes a lot of greenhouse gases, even if it comes from, shall we say, from hydroelectric power. There's a lot of greenhouse gas emissions, not only from the reservoir, but also the power used to build the dam, etc., etc. And electricity is not a carbon neutral energy source. Maybe at the end it's carbon neutral, but this I thought was an interesting one, that people start thinking about the amount of electricity that if it's, I believe, let's see, in here they're talking about a 289% increase by the middle of the next decade in China in their internet infrastructure, putting pressure on the country's pledge to go carbon neutral by 2060. Well, it's not just China that's got that problem. It's many countries around the world are going to have that problem. And it's got to be recognized and dealt with. And yes, we may come up with more efficient ways to produce electricity, but essentially, any energy, no matter whether it's just even me talking, has a greenhouse gas cost. And we have to start recognizing that. I somewhat feel guilty even using the computer to get this information out. Now, we'll just take a look at a couple of other things that out of Korea. Korea is probably the furthest advanced in 5G in the world, or at least was until relatively recently. And some of the 5G problems are showing up there. And I'll just quickly scroll down to that. A lot of the Korean customers are canceling their contract because of poor quality, inadequate coverage, and high fee structure. But if you go a little further, there's something here that someone's asking, what changed with 5G? The phone battery runs down faster, a user told me. He thought it was a malfunction in his smartphone caused by shorter battery life. Brought it to the manufacturer's service center, where he was told that switching between 5G and LTE, which was the previous, consumed a lot of power. Now he goes on he points out that the speed is not as quickly as he wanted or into what he expected. He says, to tell the truth, LTE is enough for me because I do not use a smartphone to exchange large volumes of data. As you can see, there's a user's report on just how effective 5G is. But don't just take it from these. Well, the IEEE says that wireless networks are very inefficient. Now they point out that 5G in particular seems to have a power efficiency problem. And you have T-Mobile and Verizon have included turning off 5G in their list of suggestions to save battery saving tips. That it's easy to look at your cell phone or your iPad or whatever and think of it in terms of very minor amounts of electricity that it uses, but think of it when it's several billion of them worldwide, and they are connecting to massive server farms which are so inefficient that they employ massive air conditioning to keep the equipment cool enough to operate efficiently. That there's the whole IT industry before 5G was a massive energy hog, with estimates actually going as high as saying that in a few years' time we won't be able to produce enough electricity to power the entire IT system or the digital system. Something people have got to start thinking about. And yes, maybe I should reduce my use of the internet as an example, but I felt it was important to get this message out and tell people or ask people to seriously consider when they're using their various electronic devices. Is the cost to the environment worth the cost of, or the benefit of what they're using it for? That no electricity generation I'm aware of does not produce greenhouse gases. Now, people don't like to think about the massive amounts of diesel fuel that are used to build hydroelectric dams. There's also a large amount of methane gas, which is worse for the environment than CO2 that comes off the reservoir from the floods behind the dams. That's a significant cost that many companies, many people just don't seem to factor into the equation. They like to look at their device and say, oh, this is not producing any CO2 when I'm using it. Well, they're quite right. The end use of electricity isn't. But the CO2 cost, the greenhouse gas cost to get that electricity to that device is phenomenal. And if you want to do a little thing to reduce the amount you're doing when you charge your device, take that charging device out of the wall after you finish charging. That they still consume electricity. Now, granted, yes, that one little device consumes very little amount of electricity, but when you think of billions of those plugged in around the world, that becomes a massive hit to the amount of energy we are producing. And we have to start maybe just saving electricity in the little bits, but saving the amount of power we consume will go a long ways towards reducing our greenhouse gases, to reducing the impact of climate change. That's something we all have to pull together, and we can do these little bits to do our bit to improve the environment for succeeding generations. Thank you.